The last one in the office. It was late on a Saturday night in October, and I was the only one left in the office. The sixth floor, normally buzzing with chatter and footsteps, was silent and hollow, filled only with rows of empty chairs and computer monitors that stared back like dead eyes. The hum of the HVAC system was steady, a constant white noise that filled the void. A lone red exit sign glowed dimly at the end of the corridor, its light barely reaching the corners. My laptop sat open on the desk in front of me, glowing with the cold light of a budget file due Monday morning. I told myself I would give it one more hour, just 60 more minutes, and I could call it a night. A chipped green ceramic mug rested by my mouse, half full of lukewarm coffee, its rim rough where it had cracked years ago. A yellow sticky note with 3 numbers scrawled on it clung to my monitor, 483, something I'd jotted down earlier and forgotten the context for. The clock on the corner of my screen read 12:27 a.m. I had already sent one email and I was halfway through another when my phone buzzed on the desk. The screen lit up with an unknown number. I almost let it roll over to voicemail, but something compelled me to answer. "Hello?" I said. There was no reply, only breathing. It wasn't heavy or ragged, just present, close, like the person had leaned into the receiver. "Hello again," I said, firmer this time, though my own voice sounded strange in the quiet office. Still nothing, only the sound of breath. I hung up and shook my head, telling myself it was a wrong number or some kind of prank. But 2 minutes later, the same number appeared. I felt irritation mixed with unease as I swiped to answer. "Stop calling me," I snapped. The reply was the same, breathing, but this time there was a faint rasp on every exhale, like a whistle barely formed. I hung up more forcefully, my stomach tightening. My eyes flicked toward the corridor outside my glass office wall. The motion-activated lights were off, leaving the hall in darkness. Then, a text arrived. "I can see you." I froze, staring at the glowing words. Another text buzzed immediately after. Blue sweater, green mug with a chip, sticky note with 483 on it. "Don't look for me." A chill slid down my spine. My sweater was blue. My mug was green and chipped. The sticky note really did say 483. Whoever it was knew exactly what I had in front of me. I stood so quickly that my chair rolled back against the mat with a hollow bump. My eyes darted to the glass wall. The hallway was still empty, nothing but shadows. I checked the office door. It could only be opened with a key card from the hallway. Mine hung from a lanyard around my neck. Nobody could have just wandered in. I told myself to calm down. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was some elaborate prank. I decided to reset by doing something normal, get coffee. The kitchenette was only 20 steps down the hall. I grabbed my mug and stepped into the corridor. The motion lights flickered on with a hum, bathing the hallway in sudden brightness. In the kitchen, I set the mug beneath the dispenser and pressed the button. Coffee poured slowly, filling the chipped cup. Above the sink, the small window reflected the room like a black mirror. My own shape hovered there. That was when I felt it. Not a sound, not a sight, but a presence. Heat on the back of my neck, like someone standing just too close. My chest tightened. I turned. A man stood behind me. He wore a dark jacket and a cap. His face was plain, almost forgettable, and his hands were empty at his sides. He didn't speak. His eyes moved from my face to the mug in my hand, then back, as if checking off a list. "You need to leave," I said, my voice unsteady. He smiled without teeth. I edged sideways so that the counter stayed between us, then bolted. My footsteps pounded against the tile. His followed, steady, deliberate, closing in. I yanked the women's restroom door open and slipped inside, slamming the lock shut behind me. I pressed my back against the sinks, chest heaving. My phone was still on my desk. I had no way to call the police. The fluorescent lights buzzed above. The vent hissed. The handle rattled once, and then stopped. Silence settled again, broken only by the slow drip from the faucet that never quite sealed. I waited, palms pressed against the cold counter, trying to control my breathing. I counted seconds. 60, 100, 200. Every now and then, I thought I heard footsteps outside, but each time it could have just been the building creaking. I stared into the mirror. A woman in a blue sweater with wide, frantic eyes stared back. That woman was me. When I estimated 30 minutes had crawled by, I finally unlocked the door. The hallway was empty. The exit sign glowed its dull red. The motion light stayed off until I stepped out, then flickered awake one by one ahead of me. I listened hard for anything out of place. There was nothing. I returned to my desk. My phone still lay where I had left it. 3 new texts blinked on the screen. The last one read, "Brave girl." Before I could even think, footsteps rushed from behind me, fast, close, coming from the copy room. I turned just in time to see him. His arm swung. Pain exploded above my ear. The world tilted, ceiling lights smeared into streaks of white. I tasted metal, papers scattered across my vision. Darkness swallowed me. When I opened my eyes again, pale morning light spilled through the windows. A paramedic was shining a penlight into my eyes. My boss stood nearby with 2 police officers. The hum of the HVAC blended with the quiet crackle of the medic's radio. Someone had broken into the server room during the night, my boss explained in a low, careful tone. An external drive was missing, a set of master keys too. Security had noticed a stairwell door left ajar and sent a guard. That was how they found me, unconscious by the copy room. I gave the officer my phone. He slid it into a clear evidence bag. I recounted the calls, the texts, the man in the kitchenette, hiding in the restroom, everything. We walked the hallway together. The dome camera above the kitchenette had been turned to face the ceiling. The copy room camera lens was smeared. The server room lock bore neat scratch marks. On the counter by the coffee machine, my mug sat cold, beside a torn sugar packet. "It looks planned," one officer said. He knew the building, the cameras. Could have been using a contractor badge. They asked who knew I'd be working late. I told them I'd emailed my boss around 8 and messaged our team. They told me I'd need to get checked at the hospital and to expect follow-up calls. My boss walked me back to my desk while the paramedic wrote his report. He kept repeating, as if to convince himself, that something important had been taken. I nodded, though my head throbbed beneath its bandage. I went home later with a folded paper that had my police report number on it. I slept with the lamp on. By the afternoon, I changed my phone number. A day later, security sent an email titled, "Incident Update." It explained that the cameras had caught no clear face. The number that had called me didn't exist. No useful fingerprints were recovered. Whoever it was had known exactly where to look and exactly when to vanish. I still work on the 6th floor. I keep my phone in my pocket now. And on my monitor, stuck where the old yellow note once was, I keep a new sticky note. It has 3 words written in bold black letters. Lock your door. It was just another night shift at the small warehouse where I work security. Nothing glamorous about it. I wasn't some ex-military tough guy or action hero, just a regular 30-something trying to scrape together a living. Most nights blurred together the same way. Me, alone in the dimly lit control room, sipping stale coffee while staring at a wall of flickering monitors. The cameras were cheap and grainy, the kind of feed where the shadows sometimes looked like figures, and the light never seemed quite steady. The warehouse stored auto parts, nothing high value, but the owner was convinced someone would try again after a break-in years earlier. His solution? A bare-bones security system, live feed only because he was too cheap to pay for a recording DVR. His favorite line was, "If something happens, you'll see it in real time." Right. The warehouse sat at the far end of an industrial park, all chain-link fences and cracked asphalt, surrounded by empty lots that stretched into silence. After midnight, the place felt abandoned, like the whole world had gone to sleep except me. The hum of the AC filled the control room, broken occasionally by the distant sound of trucks grinding gears on the highway. My routine was simple: scroll my phone, sip coffee, glance at the monitors, repeat. That night, or more accurately, that early morning around 3 a.m., I was struggling to stay awake. My eyelids drooped, my head bobbed, and I caught myself jerking upright more than once. I was yawning, rubbing at tired eyes, when something on the back door feed made my blood run cold. The rear entrance camera showed the loading dock, a metal door beneath a single harsh floodlight. At first I thought it was just a glitch or a shadow from the light pole, but no, someone was standing there, dead center in the frame. They wore a long black robe and a ghost face mask. The cheap kind you'd find in a Halloween shop for $10, all white plastic with hollow black eyes and a drooping eternal scream. Under the floodlight, the mask's shadows looked wrong, like the eye sockets were deeper than they should be, like the mouth was yawning open into a tunnel, and the figure wasn't moving. They were perfectly still, facing the camera directly as though they knew I was sitting there, watching. My chest tightened. I leaned forward, heart thumping, studying the grainy pixels. The mask tilted slightly upward, as if it were looking through the camera, through the wires, and straight at me. I swallowed hard. Who the hell would be standing out there at 3 a.m.? The gate was locked. Deliveries didn't come until morning. The surrounding lots were empty. I fumbled for the radio, thinking of calling Mike, my co-worker who was patrolling the front. But then doubt crept in. Maybe it was some prank. Local kids sometimes broke into the area to tag walls or throw rocks. Maybe one of them had dressed up thinking it would be funny. Except this figure was tall, adult-sized, not jittery, not laughing, just standing, still as a statue. I stared for a full minute. Nothing. No movement, no sway, no shift of weight. It was like they were carved from stone. Finally, I couldn't stand it. I decided to check. The control room sat at the center of the warehouse, so I had to take a long hallway to the back. That door wasn't easy to get through. It had a magnetic lock, a deadbolt, 2 keys, and a keypad. The owner bragged it could withstand a battering ram, which meant if this figure had somehow gotten close, it wasn't by force. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I walked. My footsteps echoed on the concrete, too loud, like they didn't belong to me. The air felt colder than usual. My stomach knotted, but I told myself over and over, probably some drunk, probably nothing. When I reached the door, I pressed my eye to the peephole. The fisheye view gave me the whole loading dock, the lights spilling across the concrete, the fence stretching into the dark. Empty, absolutely empty. I blinked, looked again, scanned side to side. The chain-link fence stood untouched, the padlock secure. No figure, no mask. My pulse hammered in my ears. How could they vanish so quickly? The camera feed was only 20 feet away, angled down. I should have seen them. I stood frozen for a moment, every nerve buzzing. Then I turned and hurried back down the hall. My heart beat faster with every step. By the time I reached the control room, my throat was dry, palms sweating. I dropped into the chair, eyes snapping to the monitor, and there they were again. The figure had reappeared, walking casually back into frame from the side, as if they'd never left. This time, the mask tilted up, directly into the lens, and slowly, deliberately, they raised one hand. They waved, not playful, not frantic, just a slow, mocking greeting. Then, as casually as they'd appeared, they turned and walked away toward the fence. I stared at the screen, frozen in place. The wave haunted me more than the mask itself. That deliberate, casual motion, like they knew I had checked the peephole and seen nothing, like they were taunting me. I grabbed my phone and called 911, my voice trembling as I told the dispatcher, "There's someone outside our warehouse, they're in a mask." They were staring at the camera, then vanished when I looked, and now they came back. They waved at me. It felt insane, even as I said it. 15 minutes later, red and blue lights strobed faintly against the walls as 2 officers pulled up. I let them in, explained everything, showed them the monitors, but with no recording, there was nothing to show, just my words against the blank screens. They swept the perimeter with flashlights, checked the fence, looked for footprints, nothing. No signs of tampering, no discarded mask, no evidence anyone had been there. "It could be a hoax," one officer said. "Kids with costumes, you'd be surprised." "Not in July," I muttered. The other asked if anyone at the warehouse had enemies, any recent firings. I shook my head. Just a quiet warehouse, storing auto parts. No reason for this. They took my statement, promised to patrol the area more, and drove off. Mike returned from his round and I told him. He laughed at first, then went pale when he saw my face. "Dude, that's messed up. Just stay sharp, man." The rest of the shift dragged like a nightmare you can't wake from. Every creak, every flicker of light on the monitors set my nerves on edge. By dawn, I felt hollowed out. Driving home in the pale morning, I couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. That should have been the end, but it wasn't. The next night, around 2 a.m., the backdoor feed caught movement again. Not the full figure this time, just a hand, a gloved hand. It reached into the frame, slowly, deliberately, and set something down on the concrete dock. Then it withdrew. I bolted down the hall, peephole again, empty, back to the monitors. Nothing, but the object was still there, a small, pale rectangle resting on the step. I radioed Mike, and together we unlocked the door, stepping carefully into the night air. The floodlight hummed above. The gravel crunched under our boots. The object was an envelope. Inside, a single printed photo. It was me, sitting in the control room earlier that night staring at the monitors. The photo had been taken through the tinted control room window. But that window was high up. The angle made no sense. No note, no words, just the photo. We called the cops again. Same officers. They dusted the envelope, clean, no fingerprints. Could be a stalker, one of them muttered. Get cameras that record. Yeah, easy for them to say. The boss refused, still hung up on costs. Days blurred after that. I started sleeping poorly, checking my locks twice, 3 times, peeking through blinds in the dead of night. The warehouse felt cursed. My apartment felt worse. One evening, heading to work, I found a tiny sticker on my car windshield, a scream mask. The cheap kind kids trade in sticker packs, but I knew they were following me home. The warehouse was 20 miles from my apartment. How? Why? And then came the worst. A week later, 3 a.m., the figure stood in the camera feed again, not empty-handed this time. They held a cardboard sign. In sloppy handwritten letters it read, "I see you too." They stood there staring, sign dangling in front of the mask. Then they dropped it, turned, and walked out of frame. I didn't check the peephole. I didn't move from the chair. I just dialed 911, whispering into the phone as my heart pounded like a drum. By the time the cops arrived, the sign was gone, no trace left. That was the final straw. The boss finally caved, installing a recording system, but the figure never came back. No mask, no envelope, nothing. The police chalked it up to a prank, maybe an ex-employee, maybe a drone tricking the cameras. They threw theories at me, but none eased the dread. Weeks passed, months. I quit the job, moved to another town, tried to bury it all. But even now, sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I can feel it again. That stare through the camera, through the glass, straight into me. And I wonder if one day, I'll look up from my couch, or my bed, or my car windshield, and see that mask waving hello again. The man with no badge. I work in a building where a badge is required for everything. The street door, the lobby, the turnstiles, the elevators after hours, our floor, even the suite itself. The system is precise. If you rush, the reader flashes red and locks you out. If you pause and swipe correctly, it blinks green and grants access. Every beep echoes faintly through the empty halls, a sound so routine during the day that you stop noticing it. But at night, when the place is silent, it becomes sharp and deliberate, almost like a signal. It was a Saturday night when I stayed late to finish an audit. The building was hushed, deserted except for me. I rode the elevator up alone, the hum of the machinery muffled by the thick walls. The motion-sensitive lights activated one zone at a time as I passed through, blooming patches of sterile white down the corridor. I swiped my badge at the suite door, heard the latch catch, and stepped into the office. Our suite looks less like an office and more like a clinic. Clean white walls, rows of desks under strip lights, the faint chemical scent of sanitizer that never fades. The kitchen hummed softly, the water filter grinding as it filled a cup. I chained my laptop to the desk with the security cable, texted my manager, "Here until midnight, draft will be ready." He replied with a thumbs-up emoji, casual as ever. Around 9 WoW, the AC slowed to a quieter rhythm, and the silence that followed felt heavier. I typed until my eyes blurred, then pushed back from the desk, craving coffee. The motion lights flickered awake ahead of me as I walked down the corridor. That's when I saw it. By the kitchen door, a folded strip of cardboard wedged carefully into the latch. A crude little shim, propping the door open just enough to keep the lock from catching. I froze. I hadn't put it there. We're trained never to prop doors, drilled on it in annual security refreshers. Still, some part of me tried to rationalize. Maybe cleaning staff, maybe someone careless. I pulled the cardboard free, tossed it into the bin, and swiped my badge again to test the door. The reader blinked green, the latch clicked solid, locked, secure. I told myself to let it go. But 10 minutes later, the elevator dinged. Its doors slid open and shut with no one stepping out. I leaned back in my chair, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. At 10 sharp, the beep of a card reader echoed from our door. A single chirp, then another, lower, like a failed swipe. My pulse jumped. I opened the building security app on my phone, only to see video unavailable. The feed was down. I muted my laptop, sat still, listening. Another beep. Then the door handle rattled against the latch, deliberate, testing. I called the security desk. The guard on duty sounded half asleep as he answered. I explained quickly. Someone was trying our doors. He told me the cleaners left at 8 hours, but he'd send someone up. I moved into the conference room near the entrance, crouching behind the frosted glass where I could see without being seen. A shadow slid across the glass, a man's silhouette. Navy shirt, but not uniform. Jeans, not work pants. He cupped his hand against the glass and leaned in. The reader beeped again. The handle jiggled. He stopped, stood there, listening. My breath caught. I ducked lower, behind the table, counting the seconds until his shape finally drifted away. I slipped into the server closet, hand hovering near the emergency exit bar that would trigger a full building alarm if pressed. I called the guard again. He told me he was on another floor but coming up. Minutes crawled by. Then came the heavy clank of the stairwell door opening, its metallic echo rolling through the hall. He had bypassed the elevator, coming around from the other side. Our back door, leading into the copy room, required a stairwell badge. I heard the reader chirp once, twice, then silence. I checked the stairwell camera again. Blank. Nothing. My skin prickled cold. I turned off the lights in my row, slipped into an interior office with no windows, locked the door, and sank to the floor with my back against it. The carpet smelled faintly of dust and old paint. I texted my manager, "Someone is trying doors." He called immediately, voice firm and steady, walking me through steps like it was procedure. Lock all doors, stay away from glass, keep the alarm bar close. I tried to breathe slow, to keep my shaking hands steady. For a long stretch, the building seemed to sleep again. Then the silence broke. The copier woke. its whir grinding through the walls. He was inside. The back door had failed. My manager said he was calling 911 and alerting the security desk again. Footsteps padded down the corridor, rubber soles squeaking faintly on the polished floor. He stopped at each office, trying handles, silent, methodical. At last he reached mine. The handle rattled twice, then metal scratched at the lock. My heartbeat thudded so loud I thought he'd hear. I dug my heel into the carpet, bracing harder against the door. The lock clicked once, then again. I whispered into the phone. "He's at my door." "Hit the alarm," my manager ordered. I slammed my palm against the bar. The siren erupted, drilling through the suite. The man didn't run. He pressed the handle again, calm, unaffected. Then a smell reached me. Sharp citrus cleaner. He had wiped down surfaces as he moved. The lock turned. The door cracked open. His eyes met mine. Mid-30s, shaved head, no company logo, no badge, no name tag. He shoved with his shoulder, forcing the gap wider. I snatched the heavy metal hole punch from the desk and swung. It struck his forearm, clattering to the floor. He didn't flinch. His weight barreled through, pinning me. The desk corner jabbed my hip. The monitor toppled and cracked. The siren howled. My phone buzzed on the floor, my name calling from it like an anchor to reality. I fixated on one thought, the cardboard in the door, the first sign I should have heeded. The elevator dinged, doors opened, footsteps sprinted. The siren cut abruptly. I lay on the floor, cheek pressed against cold carpet, metallic taste in my mouth. Voices shouted in the hall. His steps retreated, then returned, slow and deliberate. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't afraid. I didn't move. I listened, waiting. The rest blurs. This became a case file. Investigators dissected it, timelines, badge logs, missing camera feeds. They noted the cardboard wedge, the failed stairwell door, the alarm. They noted I followed protocol. Check doors, don't prop them, don't allow tailgaters, trust instincts. If something feels wrong, it is. I replay it constantly, rewriting it in my head like an audit note. If you ever sit alone in an office late at night and hear a badge beep that isn't yours, do not ignore it. Do not wait for proof. Stand, call, set off the alarm. Make the building loud, lock a second door, brace it with a chair. The rules aren't for training slides, they're for moments like this. The last thing I remember is a radio crackling outside, security voices shouting, my name spoken by someone I knew. I wish I had pressed the alarm 5 minutes earlier. Do it before you need to. Walk out while you still can.